Improving the basic skills in just 30 days of targeting learning support lessons. This is the aim of the launch of teaching at the right level, well known as TaRl. The TaRl program was approved by the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture on the 19th of March 2022. Let's have a look at the insert on TaRl.
TaRl stands for Teaching at the Right Level, and it's a numeracy and literacy catch-up program.
We create safe space and fun games where kids can learn.
We use materials in the program, such as sticks, stones,
to get the learners engaged with mathematics, to love mathematics and to love reading.
The learners are actually excited about it.
At first, when TaRl approached our office, we wanted to try it on in our learning support trainings that were offered nationally.
We have traveled to the Karas region, also to the Oshadanjupa region, trained volunteers.
They've been incredibly supportive.
So TaRl comes in order for them to integrate that approach in order to help the learners.
We've reached over 1,000 learners.
Teaching at the right level!
With more details on this, I am now joined by Regina Hausiku, the Senior Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, as well as Angelica Town Amporo, the teaching at the Right Level Country Director. Thank you, ladies, for joining us this morning. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm great. Let's start with the both of you. Teaching at the right level. What are we talking about here? What does it mean to be taught at the right level?
Yeah, so the teaching at the right level really is about exactly as the name suggests. It's about changing kind of the focus of education from curriculum coverage and making sure you kind of finish your syllabus to making sure that you meet the child where they're at and are able to develop those foundational literacy and numeracy skills. And so I'm sure you and many people might know at least one child who's in grade 4 or 5 or even above who cannot read or cannot read a full sentence. And they're in class learning, really advanced topics, maybe renewable and non-renewable resources or pronouns or some crazy stuff, and they can't read. So how are they doing their exams? How are they accessing this curriculum? And so what we've seen is that there are so many children in school all over the world for the first time that are in school going every day, but they're not learning. And this learning crisis is not just for Namibia, it's all over Africa, all over the world, really, and only worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic with school closures. So teaching at the right level comes in to say, how do we shake this up? How do we deal with this problem and go back to the basics and give learners a chance to catch up to their grade level?
All right. Ms. Regina, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, teaching at the right level, it's an approach that TaRl uses in order to address the needs of the learners. It's actually, for the Ministry of Education, it's a learning support. It provides learning support to the children. If we talk about learners that are in inclusive schools, that are lacking the basic competency at that specific grade, they are placed in a learning support class, for instance, and then in that learning support, they are provided learning support in the area where the kids are lacking. So, in order for them to meet the competency, basic competency for that grade, and then they are placed back in that specific class again. So, I think teaching at the right level is an approach that really helps to maximize the potential of the children in the class.
All right.
Yeah.
So you have different kids of different age groups. Who exactly are you targeting?
Yeah, so we target all of the learners, as she mentioned. Those might be learners who are in a learning support class or in the mainstream classroom, and we will regroup the learners by their assessment. So it starts with a simple one-page assessment to know what level is the learner at in both literacy and numeracy. And then they're grouped according to their level, not according to their age or grade, for 1 hour often per day, and given that learning support for about 30 days. And after that, we measure again with that same tool and see has there been any improvement.
Okay. Now, Ms. Townsend, while we are on you, this is a non-profit volunteering organization with a mission to improve foundational numeracy and literacy skills in the Namibian government schools. Give us more details on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very fortunate to travel to India and Botswana and many countries that are implementing the Teaching at the Right Level program. It has over 15 years of evidence, 6 randomized control trials. I mean, this program really works, and it works fast. And that really inspired us to bring the program to Namibia and offer it as a part of the solution. And we've been very fortunate to have the support of so many schools and parents and the Ministry of Education to see how we might bring this to every school in Namibia.
All right. Now, talking about education, how does the TaRl support the education system?
If I take you back, what happened 2 years ago with the pandemic, most of the school closed because of the lockdown, and then what happens that children were just at home and they were given, they have to learn through some digital devices or either distance learning and all that. So somehow it created a backlog. So that with that backlog, some of the kids have to be transferred into another grade without them achieving those basic competencies. So bringing in TaRl, because the Ministry of Education, our mandate is to ensure that children they receive the learning support that they require in order for them to achieve those basic competencies. So what we did with TaRl is that they approached our office, and then we saw it that we really need TaRl in the schools to ensure that we address the backlog, because with them what they do is they do an assessment to identify the learning gaps that exist either in numeracy or in literacy, and then they advise the teachers on what they are going to do, what type of strategies they are going to use in order to address those gaps. So that they help to address those gaps. So TaRl is really, it's like an approach that is working towards our learning support program, because the Ministry of Education has learning support program that is being implemented in class and also after school. So that's what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Ms. Samporo, the program improves the basic skills in just 30 days. How is that possible?
Yeah, well, one thing is that once you have the assessment, people really understand the level of the child, and they're able to change their teaching. TaRl works in 2 ways. We work with teachers, but we've also mobilized over 50 volunteers in the Karas region and also in the Komas region to be a part of the program. And then after they do the assessment, they target their instruction with really fun games that have been developed over, again, 15 years of experience. These games and these activities make it child-centered. They build the confidence of the child. They make the child love learning. And they even practice after school on their own. And that's how we've really seen the kind of snowball effect of children getting involved and loving mathematics, loving learning to read.
Okay. I mean, what are the successes of this program? We understand that it's also happening in Ivory Coast.
Yeah, it's happening in over 10 countries.
Okay.
It originated in India with an organization called Pratham. It's actually an organization that started a lot by volunteers and parents, concerned citizens who wanted to be a part of the solution. And I think that same spirit is what brings the Teaching at the Right Level program to Namibia. And we've seen so many success stories. So far, we have 26 schools across the country doing the Teaching at the Right Level program. We've managed, with the ministry's support, to train over 500 teachers, mobilized volunteers in different communities, and we've really seen a change. Again, it's an evidence-based program, which is really, really great. So you can see improvement in just 30 days using that same tool over and over again. And then we use that information and that data to go back to maybe the regional directorate or even at the kind of central office level to say, how are we doing? Can we drive improvement? Where are we achieving? Where are we not? And what can we do to really improve the whole system and making sure this backlog is just a history, right?
Okay. Now, Ms. Hausiku, does the ministry plan on implementing this program in all schools in Namibia?
Just to touch on that, like Angelica have mentioned, what we have done as a ministry, because I am from the Division of Special Education, so we have invited TaRl to be part of our training, national training. So far we have trained about 6 regions.
Okay.
So we invite them so that they can introduce their program to the teachers, to the regional officials, so that they can also buy it in. So we have tried it at the schools, where we go and test it at the schools, and it has worked in the schools. The teachers like it, and the learners are also benefiting from this program. So therefore, the ministry and TaRl, we are drafting a MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, to see to it that it is extended to schools that really needs it, in order for them to begin with the implementation. At this stage, our agreement is still premature, so we are still working on a memorandum of understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, while we are on you, Ms. Hausiku, is the program with a policy on inclusive education and the national curriculum, are they in the same lane?
Yeah, they are in the same line. Like I said, with our division's mandate also is to offer learning support. So learning support is providing, addressing the needs of learners that have a backlog, and also working with kids with disabilities. They really struggle. They have a lot of limitations when it comes to learning, and they really need that extra support in order for them to really maximize their potential, or to gossip, or to also achieve their goal. So therefore, TaRl, we are actually, it's an approach that is providing support, that is learning support. Learning support is our mandate that we are doing in the Ministry of Education. So we also have drafted inclusive education syllabuses, for instance, for learners with intellectual impairment, for learners with learning difficulties. So therefore, these curriculums were amended. They were reviewed in order to address the needs of learners with intellectual impairment and learning disabilities. So therefore, TaRl is also just an approach that is going to help the teacher. And just for you to know that they use teaching materials that are very cheap. They don't need to go in the shop and buy them in terms of, they use stones in order to count, which is really very beneficial for learners that are very, that really want to, that cannot learn by just seeing things there, but they need to touch, to feel, and all that in order for them to really grasp what the teacher is teaching them. So,
talking about touching and feeling, does the program also accommodate children with disability, those that cannot see, those that cannot hear?
Yeah, it does accommodate learners that that cannot hear, because for a child that cannot hear, all you need is just an interpreter. Because if you are deaf, it means you need an interpreter to interpret whatever. Because with learners that are in a hearing impaired school, they go through the same curriculum as learners that do not have any hearing impairment. Right. So learners that are visual, it's even good for them because they can touch. At least for them, they need to touch to feel, because they cannot see. Right. So which is really very beneficial for learners that are visually impaired.
Okay. Now, Ms. Amporo, you mentioned earlier that over 500 teachers received a training on this program. How did they receive it?
They received it through the partnership that she mentioned in the 6 different regions. We've also been sort of demand-driven. So whenever we go to a region, we talk about the Teaching at the Right Level program. And the schools that need it the most, they're there raising their hand. We need you to come here. Yeah. When can we put you on the timetable next week? And we've seen some very passionate teachers and school principals that really want to be a part of this solution and are implementing this program even before we are ready to support them. We have more teachers and more schools that want training than we can even provide. And we're looking forward to expanding and being able to meet all of those needs. Okay.
I understand the program will be launched this week. Yes. Talk to us about the logistics.
Yes, so we'll be launching the program on Thursday at Eros Primary School in their beautiful hall. And we've invited many principals and teachers and community members that are that are interested in this program and want to be a part of it. We are very kind of open arms, and we want to make sure that everyone knows that Teaching at the Right Level is here as an option. We also have a phone option for parents if they're interested. Let's say your school doesn't have Teaching at the Right Level yet. We actually have volunteers who will call your child in your home and be able to deliver tutoring over the phone. Okay. And so with all those different options, we just wanted to launch the program and say, hi Namibia, we're here. And there's some great work already happening.
Okay. Ladies, any final remarks from the both of you before I let you go?
Yeah, just to add on, as we speak now, we are conducting trainings on learning support. We have started with schools for the hearing impaired and then the school for intellectual impairment. So we have also invited TaRl. So they are at the schools. We also want to test it in special schools to see to it that if it's going to work or not. If it doesn't work, then there is an opportunity that we amend the tool to fit the learners' needs. Right. So at the moment, we have trainings that are happening, which are funded by UNICEF, which is also our partner. So.
Yes, TaRl?
Maybe the last thing I'd say is that maybe to all of the parents, if you have a child, I was also in that circumstance where, I don't know how to help this child. I'm not necessarily trained to be a primary school teacher. Mm-hmm. It's just to say that that children, even if they're behind, they can still learn, they can still catch up, even in a short amount of time. They just need that extra attention and that extra help.
All right. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
All right. That was Ms. Regina Hausiku, the Senior Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, as well as Ms. Angelica Townsend, Ms. Angelica Town Amporo, who is the Director of the Teaching at the Right Level. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly.